Hey everybody, welcome to Whiskey Wednesday. So today we are in the barn with our farrier Jessica. And as you can see, we are no Whiskey Wednesday right now. And that is because we are actually filming in the morning today. And I don't know about all of you, but drinking whiskey this early in the morning doesn't set a great precedence. And I actually want Jessica to actually be able to do the farrier work today. So we decided to skip the whiskey for right now. So just imagine the bottle here. So as I said, Jessica is our farrier for our rescue, and she's been with us for several months now. And so why don't you introduce yourself, tell us how long you've been doing this, and what got you into this?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for having me. So my name's Jessica. I'm a certified journeyman one farrier with the BWFA, so I've been doing this for several years. I got into this a little bit later in life than most farriers, just truly because of my passion for horses, specifically a paint quarter horse named Toby, who has shivers. So if any of you know what shivers is, you're probably like gasping right now. It's a neurological disorder, typically affects the hind legs and the front legs, but it long story short is degenerative, makes them a little bit more difficult to back up, pick up their feet. And because of that, it makes them very difficult to work on as a farrier. So wonderful trail horse, wonderful horse. But when I had my farriers come in, they have good days and bad days. And some days he would be great for a farrier. Other days it would be more challenging. And that kind of started me thinking, I'm like, I bet if I just had a little bit more skill set, I could work with him on Mondays and then on Tuesdays and kind of do these little extra jobs that would make it less stressful on him and keep him with some better hoof care. So I enrolled in a 2-week course for farrier school up in Michigan and loved it after 2 weeks. And 2 weeks turned into more weeks, which turned into months, which turns from graduating from farrier school. So I learned everything from rescue horses, which I'm sure we'll talk about, shoeing, corrective shoeing, laminitis, founder, and I couldn't get enough of it, and it turned into a part-time business. That's something I'm very passionate about.
So obviously there's not a lot of female farriers. I mean, I think we're seeing a more than we did, say, 10, 15 years ago.
Yes.
But it's not as common for women farriers. How have you found that being a woman in this industry?
Oh, fine. Let me put it that way. I do agree with you. Like, if you look historically, it's more of a male-dominated profession. But a lot of women are getting more into it. I do think there's nothing that precludes women from being wonderful, excellent farriers. I do think sometimes I need to work a little bit more on the skill and the technique more than like brute strength. But honestly, like none of that hinders. And I think you'll find a lot of new farrier businesses are even more catering to like the chaps that I wear are actually specifically women-made chaps, so they fit really nicely. And there's a big wealth of women who are now coming in. Like when I was in school, most of us actually were women over men, so I think there's going to be that shift.
So I often tease Jessica that I have some friends that have gotten on the TikTok side of farriers. And there is a farrier that is a British guy that usually does his work shirtless. And my friends will send me these TikToks going, hey, does your farrier look like this? And if so, can I come watch your farrier? And then I'll always message them back and say, well, no, my farrier is a woman. So yeah, no. And their response is always like, no, really? Like it, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And they were like, oh, like, that's kind of cool. I didn't know that. But I always get the laughs about that people that have nothing to do with horses somehow get on the TikTok side of farrier and this is what they start watching. And a lot of them talk about that it's so cathartic watching the trims and watching them do that. And I just get giggling at that because they don't, obviously a lot of them don't understand, like it's not easy. It's difficult. You're dealing with horses sometimes that don't want to cooperate. Or
Correct.
like we have a young one that's a little feral still. So she's still learning. And there's always that risk of getting kicked or dangerous things happening. How do you deal with that when you go into new horses? Like you're going into a new barn for the first time, you don't know these horses. What do you do to kind of assess the situation?
Great question. Safety is always paramount, both for the horse owner, the handler, myself as a farrier, but of course also the horse. And you always take it low and slow, right? Like get the background if this is the first horse that you've ever farried with this owner. What's the horse's background? What do they know about them? any weird quirks that they have, right? Approach the horse very respectfully, like let them sniff you, give them a couple pets, like you don't rush into it. And I always do kind of a few like little like test things, like I tap their leg, kind of see like, how are you feeling today? Even your steady old horse might just be having an off day, so I even do that with horses I know, like how you doing, how you feeling? And then you just really try to meet the horse where they are. I mean, there's a certain fine line between not letting the horse get away with bad behavior so it learns and reinforces bad behavior, but also learning that a lot of that bad behavior might be fear, might be lack of confidence, especially dealing with rescue horses that might be pain-based, so it's not their fault, they're not trying to be bad. So just doing what you can and talking with the owner and understanding that you might not get that 100% perfect trim that you're trying to get today, but that doesn't mean you might not get there in 3 to 6 weeks. It's about making the horse better as much as you can on that day with what the horse provides you, and having a plan to get to a fuller recovery if that's what the horse needs.
So you deal with our rescue horses, you dealt with other rescue horses. What is some of the most common issues you see with rescue horses coming in?
Without a doubt, it's what we'll call lack of farrier disease, which basically means they haven't seen a farrier on a frequent enough cycle. If you Google online, they'll probably say 6 to 8 weeks is typical. Depending on what your horse is, I would say 4 to 6 weeks is now kind of the lower range, especially like if they have, like different types of problems or shot issues that you would have to do. So typically with your rescue horses, it's neglect. So they just haven't seen a farrier in months, in some cases actually years. And what you see with that is not just like your fingernails. It's not that they just have long nails and you trim it and you're done. The hoof capsule is so important for the bony structural alignment within the horse's leg column and how it attaches to the different tendons. So if the hoof is super long or if it's out of balance, it's not just long fingernails that get kind of annoying to you. It really disrupts the balance and the muscular, shouldn't say muscular, but that's a part in there, but the skeletal balance of the horse. And if it's really out of balance, that puts a lot of pressure on a lot of the different tendon structures. So all of that, of course, is connected to all the other different parts of the horses. So again, you're not even looking about pain and misalignment in the foot, but further up the leg, even up into the spine, that can have cascading effects, tendon injuries, beginning of arthritis, further arthritis. And it can take quite a while to get those structures back
that was
in
going to be
place.
my next question is, a lot of people think, oh, you get a farrier in, they see the farrier and it's a one and done thing, but it's not. So can you talk about kind of the timing of all this, like the extensive amount of time that it can sometimes take, and just kind of walk through that?
Yeah, absolutely. And all of this is like the depends, right? So that's the asterisk is home. If you're taking notes, asterisk, it depends. But generally, if you're having a horse that has an exceptionally long toe, let's say that's really curled up, if you look at those like extreme cases that you can also see on TikTok and YouTube, they're at the top of the case. You can do a lot for a horse with that initial trim if they're tolerant of it. You have the patience. And again, a lot of those trims are probably helped with some type of sedative to help the horse get there through. But a lot of those different structures, if it's really been a long time since the horse has been done, you're dealing with a lot of cracks, or you're dealing with a lot of alignment and tendon issues. Let's say a year is a really good thing to think about. Horse hoofs grow on average, and again, think of this as average, about 1/4 of an inch every month. So if you look at the normal hoof length, you're looking at about a year from the beginning of a hoof to when it will completely grow out. So if you need a completely new hoof structure, you're about a year into this journey.
Yeah, I remember when we first got Rolo, our first donkey, he had the slipper hooves.
Did.
And he came from a really bad situation. So and this was over 10 years ago, I was really surprised at that length of process that it took to get his hooves just even looking normal again. And the slippers were so bad that he only took a little bit off every 4 to 5 weeks. And so it was over a year, it was almost 16 months for us, of just slowly going back and going back and going back. But I would say by the time his hooves looked normal, normal hoof, it was almost 2 years where everything had grown out finally, and there was no more damage and no more results of the slipper. And I think that was something that I was really surprised about is, just the length of time that it can sometimes take to work these problems out.
Yep, it's dedication.
Yeah. And that's why, I mean, obviously, like you right now, on one of our horses, you come every 5 weeks because he has a crack. So tell us about that, like what you're doing with him right now so that we can fix this problem.
Yeah, and I will caveat there's lots of ways to fix similar different problems. So again, you know, if you're working with your farrier at home and you're like, well, Jessica online said this, well, that might be the case. There's lots of different ways to really do it justice for your horse. And I'll, again, I'll add that asterisk. It depends, and what works well for one horse might not be the best solution for another. So again, talk with your farrier, talk with your veterinarian, get a holistic plan that best fits your specific animal that you're in interest. With Titan, with his case, he's a big guy. You know, he's pretty heavy. When you have these heavier horses, that's just more weight that goes on those hooves. And he developed a crack just from the weight. And for him, it was really just more. It wasn't a serious crack. This wasn't a whole rehab. I certainly wouldn't put it in that category at all. But for him, like the best solution was we're just going to really keep on top of that crack. So we really shortened his trim cycle. I could take a lot of the crack away before it would be able to progress. And he's doing great. And so that's really only been a couple of months. And I anticipate today he'll be done.
We were trying to prevent putting shoes on him. That was kind of our goal, was to see if we could correct it without shoes.
Correct.
Because I'm more of the proponent of trying to keep as natural as possible. If we don't have to start them on shoes, they have an overall good hoof health. If we can keep them out of shoes, I'd rather do that. And so that was one of the things we were trying to do, is prevent shoes going on.
Right. And I'm certainly not anti-shoe. I think shoes are a wonderful therapeutic device and tool that, again, is based on your individual needs and based on what you're doing. But 100% agree, like if a horse can be barefoot, oh my gosh, absolutely do it. There's so much more health benefits for a horse that can maintain their feet in a barefoot cycle. Again, nothing wrong with, you know, if you have your horse's shod or if your farrier's doing that, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have to, for the overall health of the horse, perfect. And Titan was a perfect case for that.
So one of the questions we often get asked is, why do your horses have to see a farrier every 6 weeks on average? But wild horses that live out in the wild never see a farrier. Why is that? So put this to rest. Why is that?
I love this question. I get this one all the time.
Yeah, we get it all the time too.
Like, why do you even exist, Jessica? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. Let me tell you why I exist. I'll answer that question through two different pathways. First, you see a beautiful Mustang running out there. You don't know how old it is. You don't know how healthy it is. You don't know how well it's feeling. You just see a beautiful Mustang. Mustangs out in the wild just don't live as long as they typically would. Again, you might find some, you know, like, well, I read that one case where it lived to be 25. I'm like, well, that's great, but how many do most of them live long for? So you do have to understand there's lots of different natural pressures out there that they don't have when they live in captivity, or at least in the domestication that we have for them, that they might be alive now, but their lifespan is likely much shorter than you would see of a horse that's maintained in a barn with human beings. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other thing you need to keep in mind is the natural selection pressures that are out for Mustangs. They run and move over rocky environments 20-ish miles a day, so they already have that really natural pressures on their feet to keep them back, to keep them maintained. And again, that natural selection pressure, that if you have bad feet, guess what? You just don't live very long. You don't live long enough to produce other babies who have bad feet. So there's lots of different pressures that you have on the Mustang population that make their situation a little bit different, versus you think of a horse that lives in, you know, a captive environment. They've been domesticated. A lot of our horses have been domesticated to do different jobs that don't always relate to really good foot care. I'll talk about like thoroughbreds for a second. Typically not the best feet, but it doesn't matter because we just want them to run really fast, right? And so we breed for that. We get really fast runners, but then you also kind of get feet that maybe aren't so great. Also, our horses, again, you know, like they have a pretty cushy life, I would say. And, you know, they probably deserve it, and that's great. I'm a softie for them as well. But they're not traveling 20, 30 miles per day. They might be a weekend warrior's pet, right, where they just ride on some like nice trails. So they're not getting that natural abrasion that they would get over their hooves to keep them in nice condition, and that's where we come in. I'm basically every 4 to 6 weeks I'm putting in that extra miles that hoof might have traveled. I'm maintaining that in the correct way that the environment cannot.
Yeah, I like the way that you put that, because you know, I taught, when people have asked us that question, I've said you have to look at the environment is the biggest issue. And the reality is that a lot of times when mares give birth to foals, if there's something wrong with their legs or something wrong with their hooves, they'll leave them because they know it's natural selection and those babies can't keep up, and they'll leave them. And it's a harsh reality where, you know, these domesticated horses that we have in these pastures are not the same way. We're there to help them. And if a baby has any kind of difficulties, we're there to help fix those problems. We also maintain pastures. I mean, these pastures are free of rocks. They're, you know, we go to great lengths to make sure our horses are not walking on rocks. But out in the wild, that's what they're walking on. Very tough terrain, very rocky terrain, which obviously helps with their hooves. But yeah, and the lifespan is very different. But I love that question. And I think it's an honest question that we get from people, because it's like, well, how come they can survive, but your horses are seeing...
It's a great question,
Yeah. I mean, and also the thing, like, you know, like I often talk about, we have an equine dentist, and they're like, you have what? And we're like, well, yeah, it's a dentist for horses. And they're like, that's crazy. But
so essential, though. But
so essential. Yeah. But the same question goes, well, how come those wild ones don't have a dentist? You know, same reason, you know, there's same reason. But that's, you know, we at the rescue go, everything that we do for the health benefit of the horses. So we have farriers, we have dentists, we have vets, we have trainers. Everybody is integral to what we do, and how we hopefully can get these horses in a good position to get adopted and to find their homes. And that's our goal, right? Is to get them as healthy, balanced, everything that they need in order to get adopted. When horses, after these rescue horses go through the process, their legs or, you know, their hooves are in good shape. Overall, you know, what, you know, to maintain healthy, what is your recommendations? Like, what is your,
get a good farrier that you've got a great relationship with, as well as that whole team that you said, right? And so I'll let other people talk to those aspects. But again, I foot stomp all the partners in the horse care industry, the vets, the dentists, the trainers, the nutritionists, you taking care of them. They're all essential. But like, just with feet, like really what I recommend is don't overlook them. You know, I might be biased here, but of all those, like, maybe your farrier might be your most important. Vets, don't hate me. But there's an old saying no hoof, no horse, and that still rings true, is if you don't have good hoofs on your horse, all these other problems are going to cascade. And it's one of the easier things to maintain before problems even come about. So if you have a horse, pick out their feet frequently, a couple times a week. Educate yourself. There's lots of great YouTube videos. There's lots of other great references, and treat them for and understand thrush, other bacterial and fungal infections that just exist out, and how you might need to maintain their feet to make sure they're staying nice and healthy. Have your vet come out every 4 to 8 weeks, again, depending on how often they recommend with your horse and the different things that are coming behind. Ask your farrier questions. Make sure you understand, like, hey, how are you treating my horse? Why? What problems are we fixing? You know, your farrier should be more than happy to have that conversation with you and explain to them what their assessment is of the horse, why, and how they're trimming it differently than how they might trim other horses. They should be more than happy to talk to you about that.
And I have to say, that's one thing I really like about you is you take the time to explain things. If you see anything, you always say, hey, look at this, this is, and you explain it in detail about what we're looking at and why it's important. And I really appreciate that, because oftentimes with, you know, sometimes 11, 12 horses that we've got right now, we're sometimes doing, you know, quick grooms, quick pick feeds. But if you've pointed something out to us in particular, then we know that that is something that we need to watch for. And I will say that you know, that relationship with your farrier, to be able to ask questions, is really important.
Agreed.
So I really do appreciate the fact that you take the time to answer our questions and then just tell us things that maybe we don't know about. I often have said that with horses, I sometimes feel like we all just need to like go get degrees in everything, because it just seems like we need to, we need to be a vet, we need to be the dentist, we need to be the farrier. But, and sometimes I say, well, gosh, I should have caught that. But again, I'm not trained in it. That's where we rely on, our experts to come in and help us, do that. And without those relationships, what we do here at the rescue, we just couldn't do. It really is up to everybody that we work with in order to help us keep these horses healthy and happy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we really appreciate the relationship, and that you're always open to discuss things with us and everything else. And I will say that, give your farriers kudos and credits, because it is not an easy job. I mean, they are out here in 100-degree heat, dealing with horse after horse after horse. And sometimes they have good days, sometimes they have bad days. I always feel so bad when one of mine acts up, because like, I always, we have the who's getting the blue ribbon for the, for the naughty horse of the day. But it's true. There's always going to be one of them that's going to act up while you're here. But we try to make sure that they're as well behaved as possible. But everyone seems to have a bad day once in a while. But so, if you've got a good farrier, make sure that you are absolutely treating them kindly, and thank them, because they're gold when you've got good ones. So I want to thank you for coming out today. I know that thankfully we only have 2 horses to do today. So we are going to take this. If you guys haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and keep following us. And we will see you next time on Whiskey Wednesday. Thanks.